No.
I gotta go. I'm still trying to figure out the chandelier there.
I wanted to get music, but
I
I heard
see.
licensing music was really expensive. So I decided to
So that's acceptable, like you sing your own version, I guess just like karaoke cover.
We'll see.
Okay.
If I get
Okay.
sued, we're in big trouble.
I had nothing to do with that. You can just sue my employer if you want to come after me. How are we?
I think we're good.
I hope so.
Why? Because we're here at,
Born Fitness Headquarters.
I believe that was where we're going to do the show intro.
Got it. Yeah.
Killing it.
Yeah. Well, we are back again for another week of That's Healthy, Right? Where we make sense of the news so you don't have to. And my week's doing great. I watched a video of a man doing burpees with a panda bear, or polar bear, which was a panda
You would
bear.
have been
Damn it.
way happier if it was a
Yeah,
panda.
it really would have been. And that is something I want to discuss.
Okay.
I also want to discuss if fat cells ever truly go away.
Ooh.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
it is. Because if not, I'm probably going to just stop working out. And what is carb cycling, and or is it something that should be implemented for the everyday person?
If we were really technical, we would have like a little ticker graphic, like Sports Center, when we were to hit the next topic.
Oh yeah.
But we're not that
We
fancy.
finally just got a cameraman. I don't know about that yet.
Yeah, really lights though.
Tomorrow.
Soon.
So that echo will be gone. Okay, but let's start it off.
Okay.
So I was reading an article from the New York Times,
Great publication.
and something I had never heard about, my mind was blown, was in this article they basically said that you never truly get rid of your fat cells. That fat cells are either gaining in size or they're getting smaller, but they never truly go away,
Right.
and that technically you're stuck with them. I want to know, is that bad research or is there truth to it? And if you do lose a ton of weight, then what's the ramifications of that? Or is it something that's always going to creep back into your life?
This is like when we get into the science of things that can be very, very difficult for some people to process because we hear information and we overreact to what it means. Something's really funny. But it is, it's true. Your fat cells do not go away.
Really?
Yeah. The fat cells that you have and you gain, they don't go away. And when you think about it, it's why, the kind of the old approach, if you will, to bodybuilding, which was like you bulk, you put on like a lot of weight, which included a lot of fat, and then you cut, has been replaced because when you bulk, you could, cut back down. But what happens is you added fat cells that aren't going to go away. Those are going to be there. So when you were done bodybuilding, you have now created a problem. What people have to understand about the human body is that, we can gain fat cells and we can make them bigger, we can shrink them, but we can't gain new muscle cells, which is a lot of, so naturally when you lift weights, you're not creating more muscle fibers. You're making those fibers denser, bigger, stronger. So it's, people wonder why is it so easy to gain weight and so difficult to lose them? Because you're not going to add more muscle cells, but you can add more fat cells, and they're just, it's about enlarging or shrinking these fat cells. So from a physiological standpoint, yes, it can be that if it's why a lot of people who are overweight, when they gain a lot of weight, it can be really difficult for them to keep that weight off because
Right.
the physiology changes. It doesn't mean that you can't overcome it. It doesn't mean that there aren't ways to, but it's why so much of what we do with fitness and nutrition is almost preventative medicine. We don't want to get someone to a point where they are so overweight that they've made their job even harder. And again, if you find yourself in that position, we've worked with tons of clients. One that I always love, showing off is Mary Beth. She's a coaching client who's with us for years, lost several hundred pounds, has kept it off, has survived cancer twice. Just an all-star. She's like the epitome of it does not matter what situation you put yourself in, it matters what you do with it. But fat cells do not go away, which is a great reason to just be mindful of the weight you have and the approach you have. But it doesn't mean you can't lose weight. If you've got more fat cells, doesn't mean that you can't become smaller or weigh less. It just means that if you get to that point, it might be easier for you to bounce back to where you were before.
Put you at a greater risk to go back.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well,
It's not fair. I'm not gonna lie. It's not fair. I mean, it's
pretty
just
jacked up. I read that and my mind was blown.
But it makes sense when you think about like why it takes so much effort for someone to like look away the view, someone be like, wow, that's fit, and it seems so easy to gain weight.
Right.
But a big byproduct of that is that we oftentimes don't pay attention to how long we let ourselves slip, how long we stop exercising or stop eating well, but we do pay attention to how well we've been eating well or exercising.
Right.
We'll be like, I have been exercising
I
have been exercising for 4 weeks, why hasn't this changed? We don't go, I have been eating like shit for 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow, this is no surprise. It's just the flip side of looking at things, but it's good to be aware of those things. I mean, it is good to be aware that the way the body adapts and changes so that you can do something about it.
All right, well, that actually is a nice little transition into addressing the approach then.
Right.
And one of the ways people address the approach of maintaining the weight you've lost and or getting down to a lower weight is something called carb cycling.
Right.
And an article that I came across, now they have a very technical term for what they define as carb cycling, and it was pretty rigid compared to my understanding of carb cycling.
Okay.
And
it did not include mention of Panda Puffs then.
It did not. It actually limited carbs to 50 grams per day.
And they consider that carb cycling?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that was their version, which I'm not going to debate that. You can define it however you want.
I will happily debate it for
But,
you.
right, yeah, I mean, that seems more keto than anything. But the idea of what they were trying to say was that unless you're a fitness competitor, then you should not incorporate carb cycling because it isn't a sustainable approach mentally or physically. So my question to you is it something that should only be for the fitness community as far as the fitness competitors, and or is there something or a philosophy in which you would use carb cycling for the everyday person?
I think carb cycling can be used by anyone. Should be used by anyone if it's a good fit for you. And I hate to sound repetitive as we talk about this. So the idea of carb cycling is that you are eating more carbohydrates on some days and fewer carbohydrates on another. Their idea of carb cycling in the article is that you would do 50 grams on your carb up day, which means you're basically eating 0 grams on your carb down day, which just is super restrictive. The thing about bodybuilding is a lot of people will look at bodybuilders and be like, I don't want to look like that, so I'm not going to take anything from their practices. And I think oftentimes it's less about what they are doing and more about why they are doing it. So for a lot of people on the days that they exercise, they oftentimes feel hungry, either before a workout or after a workout. So carb cycling is really just a way to manipulate how much you eat on a day-to-day basis so that you are able to deal with your hunger. So if you find yourself during a 7-day period, let's say you work out 4 days a week, during those 4 days per week, if you crave carbohydrates more, you can eat more carbohydrates. And then on the 3 days that you don't, you would eat less carbohydrates. And if you're actually taking like a mathematical approach, the idea would be that the total number of carbs you would eat during that 7-day period would be equal to the total number of carbs you would eat if you did not cycle.
Right.
So if you just kept your diet consistent, if you eat the same thing every day or the same amounts every day, we're not telling you that you have to eat the same thing, I certainly don't, no, you don't either. The idea is more of the consistency in approach. And it's just practical because if on days that you don't exercise, you're not as hungry, eating less isn't going to affect you as much. But if a lot of people just feel ravaged, especially like certain activities, we have a lot of people who love swimming or cycling and they feel so hungry when they come to us in our coaching program. We're like, let's take a carb cycling approach so that on those days when you're burning more calories, where you feel hungrier, you can satisfy those needs. And on the days when you're not, you don't have to. And it just makes it easier for the diet to follow. But it does not mean that it's superior from a fat loss or a muscle gain standpoint. You could eat, again, the same amounts every day rather than changing the amounts you eat. And it's going to be just as effective. This is more about almost like a mindset, a psychological approach that allows you to stay on task, because we talk about it all the time, these psychological barriers to eating well or exercising well or transforming your body are oftentimes more difficult to overcome than the physical ones. So you have to understand, where are you likely to fail, where is it that you slip up, and sometimes something like carb cycling can be very effective. It doesn't mean like you're going to end up looking like a bodybuilder, not at all. I mean, the amount of work that they put in to look like that, and for some of them the amount of drugs that they take, makes it very difficult for the average person to look that way.
One of the most important things is I've tried carb cycling for a long time, and you know that very well, but what I found myself getting in the habit of, and which I think you made very clear there and I want to emphasize, is the fact that listening to your natural body cues, as in you worked out and now you're hungry, therefore it's going to be more food throughout the day. Something that I fell into was the correlation of working out justifying more food.
Right.
So the big issue there was, especially on days where if I all of a sudden I'm supposed to work on Friday, I don't work out, then it puts me in this like mental conundrum of, can I eat? Should I restrict today? And it was like a kind of like a reward for working out, and or a punishment if I didn't. And it never came down to, is like, am I actually more hungry? No, it became kind of a association of working out equals more food. And if I didn't work out, it became a very, very vicious cycle that was very dangerous. But if you're actually listening to your body and you're aware, it can be a very sustainable approach.
Right, because the flip side of what a lot of people experience also is they like to work out and then they use that as a rationalization to eat anything. Well, I worked out today. So let's say if your goal is weight loss, and you know the idea isn't to counterbalance the efforts of your exercise with the efforts of your eating. It's still to create a slight deficit, still
right.
to burn more than you take in. So while it might give you that license to eat a little bit more, if you find yourself always rationalizing, what happens is you undo the efforts of your exercise, and you wonder why you're stuck in the same place. It's because you're always like, well, I exercise so I can eat this much, and that's not the reality. We used to think that, you know, a pound of muscle burns, they would say like 50 calories. And it's more like a pound of muscle burns like 6. Now that's not meant to like be defeatist, because the more muscle you have on your body, the more that you process foods differently. You become less sensitive to hormonal shifts, such as carbohydrates, making you fat per se. But if like we get stuck in this mindset, I've got this muscle, I'm going to be burning all these calories, it's oftentimes not as much as we think, so we just don't want to over-assume the impact. Yes, exercise allows you to eat more. Yes, exercise allows your body to process food better. Yes, this working together will make you feel, function, live longer, be healthier. But when we push the limits of that, that's when people struggle.
It's a very interesting approach. Okay, on a lighter subject,
Ooh,
I'm hoping that Jordan can provide a link for this, because have you seen the YouTube video of the man doing burpees with a polar bear?
I have, because a lot of people thought it was like animal cruelty.
Really?
They got pissed. They're like, look at this guy. Well, I mean, it's kind of cruel to make humans do burpees.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so why is it okay to do a bear who's in water? He weighs a lot more than you. You know how hard it is for a bear to do a burpee? Think about
resistance
like
in the water
me
like
doing
that.
a burpee compared to you doing a burpee. Or me doing a pull-up compared to you doing a pull-up.
You've got that huge chest. It's so much harder for you. But no, in all seriousness though, that video got me thinking though, why is it that burpees are always associated with fat loss?
That's great. I'm going to blame CrossFit on that one.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's because
there's certain exercises that are just associated with fat loss, or certain exercises associated with muscle gain, but inherently burpees and fat loss.
Right. And I think the problem here is that, you know, it's the type of workouts that they are put in, and it's almost like a biofeedback thing. You do burpees, what happens is like your heart rate starts going up, you get out of breath, and it's just like it's full body movement. And the fallacy here is that certain exercises are put into fat loss workouts because, one, they do burn calories, but two, it gives you that feeling that makes it it feel like you're burning more calories. Where the reality is, almost any exercise can be a fat loss exercise.
Right.
It's more about the design of a workout. You know, what's funny is like one of my favorite fat loss exercises is a farmer's carry, where the farmer's walk is another way to go. Like literally, you take 2 heavy dumbbells, as heavy as you can take them, and you just walk for as long as you can with them. And you find that like your upper back, your legs, your core, everything starts to burn and shake. And you know, you have to understand that the way that fat loss works is more about like a metabolic stress on the bottom. There are a lot in the body. There are lots of ways to do it. You can do a lot of reps, which is oftentimes what happens with burpees, and that's why you feel so exhausted, especially the more muscles that you involve in any type of exercise.
Right.
The more caloric demand it creates. It's why these full body exercises, it's why squats, it's why deadlifts. You'll oftentimes see them in fat loss programs because they involve so many muscles. You're going to crush a lot of calories. You know, the fallacy is that people fall in love with one exercise or another, like burpees, and think that they have to do it. Whereas like people who do burpees can be susceptible to injury. The polar bear doing burpees, if I had a polar bear as a client, I would not have him doing burpees. I would not have a 1,000-pound creature jumping because of stress on joints and ligaments. It's not the most efficient way to create metabolic stress. So I think the big takeaway on burpees or polar bears doing burpees is that we shouldn't fall in love with the idea of certain exercises being only for fat loss or only for muscle gain or only for strength gain. It's more about how those exercises are executed in a way that will help you reach your goal.
Got it.
Well, you can keep doing burpees if you want, though.
Only if can we get like an office polar bear?
I think that would be even more expensive than the licensing for music.
I've been rewatching Lost too, and there's polar bears in that. It's a great show.
And a mascot?
What?
The Bornstein is polar bears.
Throwing a tire.
You throw it way farther than
Nailed it.
Way farther than I would.
All right. You know what time it is?
Lunchtime?
I wish. Viewer question.
Yes, viewer question.
Yeah. And this one is perfect timing.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because our cameraman, Jordan, loves his, Nutrition One peanut butter pie protein bar. Okay?
Okay.
Did you steal I watched him. I walked downstairs. He was wearing his robe. Nothing underneath. It was quite disgusting. And
that's my brother. That's disturbing.
Eating his protein bar. And when I read the package, I'd never eaten one of those. Clearly on the label it says 2 to 3 grams net carbs.
Okay. But
when you actually look on the back, it says there's 24 grams of carbs.
Right.
So our viewer question, when I went in to go find one, came from Travis Babel, one of those. Travis, you know which one that is.
Hey, Travis.
And he asked, are net carbs just a bunch of BS?
What does BS stand for? You're trying so hard to come up with something funny.
Something. Got nothing there.
I believe it's bullshit.
Yeah, the net carb deal.
Net carbs became really popular when the low carb movement took over, because the low carb movement was really instituted on this concept that carbs raise insulin levels. Insulin is a storage hormone. If you raise your insulin, you're going to store fat. So you don't want carbohydrates because they'll make you fat. Great theory, and yes, insulin is a storage hormone, but it can store fat. It can store muscle. The level of fitness on your body is going to heavily influence how sensitive you will be, insulin sensitive versus insulin resistance to carbohydrates. That's why fit people can oftentimes take in much more carbohydrates than non-fit people. So it's not a byproduct of carbs being evil, carbs being the devil, something we've talked about a lot. It's more about how your body processes those carbohydrates. So net carbohydrates was really a wonderful way for us to manipulate the way that we process carbs mentally, not necessarily physically. So net carbs is the total number of carbohydrates. So it's the total number of carbohydrates minus sugar alcohols, things like maltitol, sorbitol, anything tall, which usually gives a lot of people gastrointestinal distress. It hurts your tummy, or mine. And so they subtract these sugar alcohols, these artificial sugars, if you will, which allegedly do not affect insulin levels because of the way they're processed. And it subtracts fiber, because fiber is good. Fiber is a wonderful thing. So to answer the question, are net carbs complete BS? They're not complete BS, because especially if you have something that is high in fiber. Let's take one of your favorites, Quest bars, packed with like 20 grams of fiber. That's a lot of fiber, and getting fiber in your diet is very important for gut health, how you process food. It is going to be a good thing. So if you see the net carb level being lower and it's because of fiber, that's great. But don't kid yourself. Carbohydrates are carbohydrates are carbohydrates. They're food, they're carbohydrates, you're eating them. If you're someone who tracks macros and you're like, oh, I'm going to be writing down the net carbs, that's 2, I'm going to have 6 Quest bars, and that's going to be 12 grams of carbs. Good day at the office. It's not how it works. This is marketing. So it's not bad for you, it's not unhelpful, but it is deception. Because it makes you think that the calories that are in a product do not exist, which they do. If something has carbohydrates, as in that means there's 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. So if you read something that said it has, 24 grams of carbs, know that that is 96 calories right there. And even if they said it was quick math, I think that was right. I don't know. I wish we had a stat boy here. And you're going to watch, right? 24 times 4? I think that's 96. I'm feeling good about this.
Yep.
So if that's the case, that's still 96 calories. That's 100 calories just from carbohydrates. Even if it says it only has 2 to 3 grams of net carbs, it doesn't mean that that bar has 8 calories in it. It does not. So I think it is more deception rather than total BS. And I would rather you just focus on the total number of calories and or carbs, and in general, I would have you focus on foods or carbohydrate sources that don't need to tell you how many net carbs are in there. It's okay to eat a Quest bar. I enjoy it, so it's not a problem, but I'd rather have you be eating fruits, vegetables, grains if you're not sensitive to dairy products, or whatever it might be, to fill up your carb allotment so you don't have to worry about some scientific mumbo jumbo that just confuses you.
How long until fruit and vegetables have net carbs on them?
I can't see a day, because how are you going to get labels on the fruit?
Next to the barcode.
No way, it's going to take up too much.
Nah.
Not on the apples that you eat. This guy eats like apples, like they're like boulders.
Trader Joe's. Love that place. Anyway, so that wraps up
Yes.
another week of That's Healthy, Right?
As always, send us your questions. We love them. We get like 2 a week now. I'm feeling good about the growth of the show.
I mean, it's taken off.
It's getting huge. Thank you. We appreciate this guy, Patrick Devaney. He really wants you to tweet
Write in your questions,
Instagram,
add me first. Either way,
send him
we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Good night, Canada.